Welcome back to the Azure podcast. Today is the 4th of March on 2022, and we are recording episode number 415. Today, we're very excited that this is a special episode with our very special guest, Kathleen Mitford, to talk and celebrate International Women's Day. And on Teams with us, of course, we have our very special guests, Kathleen, as well as Suji, and myself, Cynthia. And really, just to start, Kathleen, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us what you do at Microsoft?
Great. Cynthia and Sujit, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today. Yes, my name is Kathleen Mitford. I'm the Corporate Vice President of Azure Product Marketing. So I work very closely with our product teams, with our engineering teams, with our sales teams on what is the vision for Azure, what is the product strengths that we have, what is the value that we're delivering to our customers, and then how do we bring that to life in how we tell that story and how we go to market. Super excited to be here. I'm still relatively new with Microsoft. I joined Microsoft at the end of May.
Well, definitely first, a warm welcome, and we're excited for you to be on the Microsoft team. And before we dive into the more professional and technical aspects of what you do, we're all calling from home today. So curious, from your perspective, what are some habits or some new things you've developed starting working from home?
Oh, some habits or new things working from home, taking a walk in the afternoon, which I try to do. So my team knows that if we're doing like a one-on-one, I will sometimes, I got to watch it with the weather here in Washington, but I'll FaceTime as I walk around because even though I work out in the morning almost every day, I just wasn't getting in as many steps as going to the office. And just getting outside, or even if I do it from the treadmill, it gives me a little pick me up energy in the afternoon to keep me going for the rest of the day.
Definitely. And I heard that you're a huge fan of chocolates. What are your favorite chocolates, or do you consume them in like truffles, drinks, ice cream?
Okay, any and all chocolate. I am a huge dark chocolate fan. It is a little bit of a debate here in my household because my husband is British, so Cadbury chocolates. And I have two kids. I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So my husband spends a huge amount of money on importing British chocolates to the house here. So the kids, and I grew up in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania, Hershey's is, in Pennsylvania area. So every afternoon I have 2 Hershey's dark chocolates to keep me kind of like satisfied with my kind of sweet tooth. But there's always the debate between the household here on what's the best chocolate. But I do not discriminate. So whether it's pure chocolate, whether it's a chocolate martini, chocolate mousse is one of my favorite delightful desserts that I typically only make around Christmas time, but any and all chocolate.
Yeah, I love those Macintosh chocolates from the UK. I always get a tin every time I go there. Beautiful.
We just finished our Christmas tin of British chocolate, so I'm happy that it made it till March.
With chocolate mousse, I have to send you a recipe. There's one that's really easy to make and it's delicious. And we try to make it around Christmas time too, because that's when you have extended amount of time to like stand there whipping. But if you have like a standing mixer, it shouldn't take that much time.
I do have a standing mixer, so do please send over that recipe.
Will do. And really the motivation for us to invite you on this episode is really to talk and celebrate International Women's Day. Right now it is Women's History Month, and we'd love to hear from your perspective and kind of your experience navigating the tech industry as a woman, how you've seen that has changed, and what are some of your vision on what this role or this perspective would continue to evolve.
Yeah, great. And happy Women's History Month to everybody. Yeah, so I'll start a little bit with my career journey. Many people know I started as a fashion designer. So I went to school, went to college for fashion design. So I didn't start in tech. And when you're in the fashion industry, there's a lot of women in the fashion industry. And I evolved from fashion into technology. I mean, I think I only spent 5 years or 6 years in fashion, so the majority of my career has been in tech. And when I'll never forget my first day going to work for a pure technology company. And I went in, went for my first meeting, and I was the only woman. And there was probably like 25 guys and me. And this feeling that came over me when I walked into the room, like I've never experienced that in a work environment. And it was a weird, kind of, I felt, I don't know, maybe like a little bit exposed, because everybody was looking at me like, oh, wow, there's a woman in this technical meeting. So as I mentioned, I've spent now, over 20 years in the technology industry in all different parts of technology, from leading engineering teams to product management teams to partner teams to acquisition teams. And it has evolved. It has evolved. I'm so thrilled at Microsoft that it is very, very rare that I'm the only woman in a meeting. That it's normally, a pretty good balance of women and men. And I'm happy to see that I have seen it evolve specifically over, I'd say, the last 5 to 7 years with the focus on it. And a lot of it begins not when we enter the work environment, but with education. And I think the focus that there's been on STEM, let's say for the last 20 years, in encouraging women and young, not just women, but young girls, that science, technology, engineering, that those are all careers that you can participate in, has then had an impact on the number of women that we see entering STEM-related fields. Now, part of the challenge that we have is that you're able to get women into the field, but the drop-off rate as you go up higher at higher levels increases. And I've spent a lot of time in my career in trying to understand what are some of the challenges specific to women in technology, because I do think it's a little bit different than in other fields out there. So for example, in technology, the technology is always changing. So you need to be able to have the time to upskill yourselves, to learn these, to learn to learn the new technology. But then often, in the evening, I don't know about, the rest of you guys that have kids, but I've got homework, I've got bath time, I've got getting, dinner ready. And my husband is a fantastic partner. But I think some of that contributes to it, that women just don't have as much time or space. So you see, women seem to drop off higher as they go in their career. So that's really been a focus for mine on the two ends, as to how can we encourage more women to enter STEM, and then what can we do to keep them? What can we do to make sure there's the time and space when they're in their workday to learn the new skills that are required in the technology industry? How can we make sure that women have the confidence to show up, to use their voice, to have their opinion, heard, and then also to make sure that they never feel like they are the only one. And we all need to take we all have a role in that. I remember for many years I've been advocating in different boards that I've been on, groups that I've been on, if I'm the only woman, to say, hey, this person, they'd be a great person to join this community, so that we're continuing to put the spotlight on that. And I know I've been rambling on here, but I have one fun story for you guys. I remember this was about 4 years ago, where I went to a conference and I was keynoting it, and it was for a particular industry. And there were about 200 men there and me. So I did my keynote, And then, they had a session for me at the end to ask questions. And I said, well, what I want to leave you with is when I look around this room, I'm the only woman. And you cannot tell me that in your companies, you do not have women doing the same position that you are. So I sure hope that when I come back here next year, that the mix has changed. And I went back the next year, and you know what? The mix changed. And at the cocktail hour that evening, I had so many people come up to me and say, thank you for raising the elephant in the room. Everybody's been thinking this. Nobody said anything, and you called us out on it. So, so it was great. Okay, I'll pause there because I'm rambling, and I'm sure you guys have a ton of questions.
Yeah, Kathleen, I was just curious. I mean, the way that you navigated your career from non-tech to tech is very interesting. I do find those give the best perspectives, from the colleagues that I have that also have taken a similar path. But I'm curious, when you came from non-tech to tech, from the fashion designing world to tech world, how did you navigate yourself in tech, and to finally find your way to where you are now? Right now, you're the CVP of Azure Marketing, product marketing. So that must have been an interesting way just to find how do you know when you're new in tech like that? How do you know where you want to go?
And I can't say that I've always known where I wanted to go. I've known where ultimately that I wanted a very senior leadership position in the technology industry, and I tried a lot of different things. So I am a curious learner. And one thing that really helped me in technology is early in my career, I was working for a startup, and the startup was moving some of their engineering from the US offshore to China. So I was extremely involved in establishing that development center in China. And I'm going to date myself, but as part of that, we had to be CMMI level 5 certified. I don't know if anybody knows what that means, but it was basically documenting the entire, development process. So because I was leading this process to get us the CMMI level 5 certification, I had to understand every part of the development process. This is years ago, so it's, it's changed. But that helped me understand, what does development mean? What does quality assurance mean? What is customer success? What is product management? What is product ownership? And I know that there's different terminology in different industries. What is product marketing? So it gave me kind of like a roadmap of like, what is the entire development process that I had to understand in levels of detail. So from then I took my first step to say, oh, I really want to be in product management, where that's where I got my entrance into the technology industry. And then after product management, I was like, oh, okay, well, as part of my my goals, I want to lead a big team. Well, most companies have a lot more engineers than they do product managers. So I took a step into leading both product management and engineering. And I had enough of a technical background to be able to do that. And how did I do that? Because, I'm not an engineer, I don't code except helping my kids with their toys, but really, again, being a curious learner. And in my spare time, I like to run. I run on either the treadmill or outside, a couple times a week, listening to Audible books, taking classes in the evening or on the weekends. Now, quite frankly, a lot of that I did earlier in my career, pre-children, when I actually had the time to devote to it. Now it's hard for me to take class in the evening, but I do like to continue to keep myself skilled. So go to like a class that you go to immersive for like 3 days, or 5 days, to be there and just to be completely focused on it. And then probably one of the most important things that has helped me navigate is talking to people that are in the role that I want to go into, and talking to them and letting them know that, hey, I want to take a step towards this. And when you'll do that, you'll see that then they start to involve you in projects that are related to your current role, but dip into where you want to get into, so that I could experience a little bit and make sure, hey, that's where I want to head. And then also that it gives me the visibility with a broader group, so that when they have a role that's opened, it's like, oh, Kathleen's been working on things related to this. So Sajid, I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, Kathleen, so nice to meet you. I apologize that I had to jump on a little bit later. I'm actually in a training this week because I recently segued into product management, actually. So the past 3 months or so, I've been in a new role, and I've navigated a similar journey in that I had to I was very field facing and then migrated into more product and have gotten to see different steps in the life cycle. So that's definitely really relevant to me. I also love, I just want to call it, I love what you said about making sure you're not the only woman. I remember I went to a women's conference at Microsoft a couple of years ago, and there was a whole talk about being the first woman, but not the only woman. And like, how do you set the table for other women to come behind you? And so I think Cynthia and myself both appreciate people who have been in the industry longer for us, who are charting the waters for what we can accomplish and where we can go. So just want to say thanks to that. I want to segue a little bit into your family life. So it's actually very like relatable a little bit to me. So my sister actually is in the tech industry and works at Chick-fil-A corporate and basically oversees their entire kind of ordering platform, which is super cool. And she went through some struggles with infertility and actually is having her first baby in April. So I'm about to become an aunt, and I'm so excited. I really am. Thank you. And I know for her, she manages a lot of people and she has a lot on her plate. And I know as someone who hopefully eventually will have a family myself, that, I'm imagining that that's going to be a hard transition. And so I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, what has that journey been like? How do you find the ability to be managing the family and also working. And I think that you're pretty transparent about your husband being a stay-at-home father, which is something that even like my sister and her husband have talked about potentially. So like, I think that's awesome. And I'd just love to hear a little bit more about how you made that decision and just sort of what your work-life balance, tends to be like.
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, Kendall, congratulations to your sister. That is such awesome news, and congratulations to you becoming an aunt. Both of my children are also IVF babies, so I have a lot of special place in my heart for other families that are having IVF babies. So how do I balance it? Ruthless prioritization. I mean, like seriously, ruthless prioritization and delegation. And let me take a step back. Before I had my daughter, I would be in the office from 7:30 in the morning till 6:30 at night, and then get back online. And I had this panic when I was going out on maternity leave, like, oh my gosh, like, what's going to happen? How is this going? How are people going to adapt to, me once I come back after maternity leave? And I went back to work, this is over 10 years ago. My daughter was, I think, 9 weeks or 10 weeks. And I breastfed her for the first year. So I had to leave the office by 4 o'clock at the latest to get home to make sure that she reached a certain feeding. And, I was I wasn't on the executive team, but I was one level down from the executive team at my former company. And a lot of my meetings were with the CEO and all the EVPs. And I'm like, am I going to be able to tell the CEO no? And guess what? Once you establish those boundaries, that Kathleen is available from 9 till 4 for detailed, meetings. And if you need something after, you can get her, but she's got a child. And it was very quick. It was very interesting to see how people adapted to the boundaries that were set. And, I had really great relationships with the executive assistants. And whenever they needed a meeting that I was in, they'd say, oh, okay, well, we have to do that during 9 to 4, because Kathleen's not, going to be available at those other times. So that was really a good wake-up call for me, that you can set boundaries. And guess what? I didn't fall behind in my career during that time. I thought that I wouldn't be able to make advancements. I actually, went from being a senior vice president to an EVP, which was senior vice president, corporate vice president, DVP, EVP, after my children were born, by setting those boundaries. Now, going back to how do I manage it? It came to a point when my daughter was born, my husband was not quite a stay-at-home dad. So he worked part-time with his own business, and then we had a nanny for the other 50% of the time. When my son was born about 7 years ago, now we have 2 children, and an infant. So we made the decision that he would become a full-time stay-at-home dad. And, even 7 years ago, I'm not going to say it was taboo, but people actually weren't that accepting of it. They were kind of like, well, what's wrong? Is your husband not successful and he has to stay at home? And that wasn't it at all. It's a choice that we made for our family, that dad's going to be at home and mom's going to be working. And, part of it, and I apologize, the landscapers always show up at the perfect time, so they're blowing outside. At the time I was traveling a lot, so it worked for us. I was also very worried about what it would mean for my daughter, and if she would feel odd that mom went to work and dad stayed at home. And a colleague of mine, who I'm still good friends with to this day, when I was pregnant with Victoria, he gave me some really great advice. He said, children know the normal that you set for them. The normal is the normal that you make for your family. So for my children, normal is mom goes to work and mom works, and dad stays at home, and dad, takes care of the family. And I just loved when my son, I still remember, how pictures pop up of your memories. A picture popped up just a couple days ago of my son pushing a shopping cart, one of those Melissa and Doug shopping carts, with all of his Hess trucks in them, So my son played with baby dolls and, doing the food shopping, and the kitchen is still to this day one of his favorite things to do, because, we don't have girl responsibilities and boy responsibilities. We have a responsibility as a family unit to do what's best for our family. So I hope that was helpful. I can't say that I always have it right, especially when leaning into a new company, working for Microsoft in a new role in leading the Azure business. There's a lot of stuff I'm still getting up to speed on. So my boundaries aren't always there, but it will get back there, once I have been fully up to speed on the role. And the other thing that's been really helpful with me is setting expectations with my children. Okay, so setting the expectations up front. My daughter has a day off today. So she came into me and she said, okay, mommy, can you take me to the playground this afternoon? And I said, I'm sorry, mommy is busy all day today until 4:30, except I have a half an hour break. So during that half an hour break, why don't we take a walk together? But that's just an example of, okay, I try to let my kids know at the beginning of the week what nights mommy has dinners, or if mommy has a late meeting, what nights, I always let my husband know, but I also am pretty open. My kids are old enough now to understand that, okay, mommy's not going to be home for dinner, but mommy's going to have breakfast with us that morning instead.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And I really resonate with the part where you said, what example you said is how your kids will perceive how families are supposed to be or how gender roles are supposed to be like. So I grew up in a family where both my parents were working, and they had a pretty equal partnership. So I was very used to that. And I've never had a second thought of I shouldn't pursue my career and think about something else or staying at home. So really, really appreciate you for sharing that. And kind of going into your last point of understanding the Azure business and then getting situated into your new role, what are some of the most surprising things you found about the Azure business, and what are some of your visions that you want to bring forward to Azure?
Let's see, what did I find surprising about the Azure business? Nothing really surprising, maybe just more, I was a partner. So what brought me to Microsoft is I worked at a company called PTC, which is a big partner of theirs. Not just they run their applications on Azure, but deeply in IoT. So I was pretty familiar with Azure. A surprise was the number of services and also the number of products. So I'd say that probably was the biggest surprise for me, because I thought Azure, oh, I know Azure. But then really once you peel back the onion and here, at Azure, we look at things by how we group them into customer solution areas. And Azure consists of the infrastructure, it consists of digital and application, and it consists of data and AI. And then we also have, security as part of that as well. So I would say some of the I guess maybe surprise was, oh my gosh, there's a lot of products there. And then there's a lot of products in there that are just massive, that would be businesses within themselves. So that was, I thought it was unknown, it wasn't that I didn't know that, but then really digging into that. So then talking about getting up to speed, it's, really trying to understand that complete portfolio and how that complete portfolio comes together to deliver value to our customers. Not a surprise, but that was part of, and that is part of my learning journey here. Because when you think about a customer and how a customer buys Azure, they don't buy by Microsoft's customer solution areas. They buy by their problem that they're trying to solve, which is probably a combination of, what we're doing on infrastructure, bringing the data together, combining that data with how they're building their applications. Does that answer your question, Cynthia?
Yeah, and also on the topic of, sorry, Kendall, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, that's one thing that I think is something that we as Azure can continue to do better, is how do we really bring scenario-based solutions to our customers that cover end-to-end problems versus, we have so many products that it's how do I bring all these together, right? That's one of the things I've been focused on in this training this week, is how do we provide customers with really good end-to-end experiences across our platform? And I love that that's a focus, at least to me, in all of these product groups. A lot of them are talking about how do we continue to integrate more deeply? How do we provide scenario-based solutions? So I'm totally with you on that. I feel even as someone who's learning Azure, it can be so overwhelming, just the plethora of things that we provide. How do we navigate this? So yeah, I agree on that.
Kathleen, one of the things I see a lot with customers these days, I'm sure you have too, is they're all talking about going cloud native or digital native. Those are the terms we use. As a matter of fact, just a couple of episodes ago, we had Stephen Kaufman, one of our CSAs, that talked about cloud native on Azure. It kind of gave us a technical landscape for that. But I'm just curious from a marketing perspective, how are we reaching out to our customers with the correct messaging regarding how Microsoft can help them get along this journey of getting to where they want to go, right, into becoming a purely digital company, for example?
Excellent question, Sajid. And it's interesting. I was talking to one of our partners a couple of weeks ago, one of our partners, and I used the term digital native. And I said to him, I said, we consider you to be a digital native. And he said, what's a digital native? What does that mean? So, which was really, I'm not going to say it was eye-opening for me, but it brought front and center that, like you mentioned, customer scenarios. We have to talk to customers in the language that they use. And I'm going to separate out, digital native or cloud native into two different groups. We have companies that are born digital, okay? So startups, that then evolve to become unicorns, and everything that they're doing, or presumably everything they're doing, is in the cloud. So if we talk to them about your digital transformation, they're going to say, what digital transformation? I'm already, I was born digital. So we really talk to them not about, migrating and modernizing, but how do they build cloud native applications, and how can they use our tools to differentiate their offerings. Now that I'm going to talk about, a set of customers that are established customers that actually do need to transform. And they separate into different groups. They're enterprises, they're partners, they're large customers, they're small customers. And they have the balance of needing to build these new cloud native applications because they know that's where, the industry is going. But they also have to take their applications that are on premise and migrate them to the cloud and modernize them at the same time. So with the team and my team, working very deeply with our engineering team has been really focused on is let's make sure we're having the right conversation with the right customer. Let's not confuse a customer that's born in the cloud with a customer that needs to modernize their digital estate. So hopefully that answered the question, but really trying by market segment to make sure that we understand what they're trying to do. We bring the right solutions to solve their problem.
That's a very good distinction. I never thought of that before. Thank you for clarifying that.
So Kathleen, I wanted to ask you, I know we're running up on time here. So I'm just curious if you were talking to yourself as you started in the tech industry and you were getting started and you could give yourself one piece of advice, or just one thing that maybe you would say would motivate you to keep going in times when it was maybe challenging or you didn't know if you would be successful. I'd be curious what that would be. And then I know Cynthia also was curious about that picture behind you. So I want to make sure that we ask about that too.
Okay, great. Well, both of those are great. So if I could go back to myself 20 years ago, I would tell myself to use my voice more often. Okay. And where my career really started to accelerate is when I took the confidence in the knowledge that I had of, the businesses I were working on, and I had the confidence in how I presented myself. And I'd say 20 years ago, even though I knew the answers, I'd be like, oh, I'm not the most senior person in the room. I shouldn't be having that conversation. Let me let the executives have that conversation. And I'll support my executives to make sure they have the right answer. Okay. And well, that is your job, is to support your team. But I always look at it that if somebody's invited to a meeting, they're invited because we want to hear their voice. So that would have been the one thing that if I could go back 20 years, that I would have, used my voice more often. Now this picture, let me grab this picture. I love this. So first hopefully you can see that picture. This is a great picture for Women's History Month. And it says, Wonder Woman, always be yourself unless you can be Wonder Woman. Then always be Wonder Woman. And the reason why I have this picture, actually one of my good friends, who used to be the chief people officer at PTC, had this picture, so I kind of copied it for her. So I'm going to give her some credit for that, is you don't always have a good day. And, I'm just like everybody else. I have good days, not bad days. And there are some days when maybe I don't have the confidence in myself that I should. And I turn around and I look at this picture and I'm like, you got this. You go, girl, you got this. So that's kind of my little inspiration for days when I need a little inspiration and to boost myself up.
Wow,
That was
Kathleen,
great.
thank you so much for that inspiration.
Yeah.
Now we have something to look forward to every day. We'll probably all have to print one ourselves and put it behind us. But yeah, really.
Sorry, Cynthia, I was just going to say, just for the audience that is going to listen to this, that was a picture of Wonder Woman itself, right, on it, and then there was some wording on it. I just wanted to make sure that the people who are not on YouTube understand what we were looking at.
See what you do, Sajid, is you tell them if you want to see it, you'll have to watch it on
Watch
YouTube.
the video. Oh yeah, subscribe to our channel. Right? I'm sorry.
Well, I want to thank you guys for having me. Thank you. We were saying at the beginning that I think that this is going to be the best meeting of my day, and it absolutely has been. I so enjoyed getting to chat with each of you.
Thank you so much.
Very inspirational. Thank you.
With your daughter. I hope that's a part of the day.
Thank you.